Alright, so welcome back to another gun build in Modern Warfare. Today we're going to be going over the best long-range version of the Fin LMG, which is the newer LMG added to Modern Warfare midway through Season 5. And essentially this is going to be going over the best recoil, or pretty good, like close to being the best recoil control you can get for this LMG, while also still being incredibly good at longer ranges. Like, this thing will actually absolutely dominate people in longer ranges. Now, if we're going to be making this thing really good in recoil department, it's going to make it to where it's a lot heavier, just because of all the attachments we're going to have to be throwing onto it. So it will not be necessarily the best in close range, which an LMG is not good anyways for it. Its role is in long range, so you shouldn't worry about that too much. It's like saying that, a sniper rifle is going to suck at close range. I mean, it's not built for it. So let's go ahead and get started with it. And we want to go with the barrel, and we're not going to be picking any of the the adverse barrels just yet. I'll be going over the main best recoil control there, and I'll be going over the second one that is using an adverse barrel, but it's going to be a little bit of a different build kind of deal. So it's kind of like a two-parter gun build here. So let's go ahead and get started. The XRK long shot advantage is what you would want. It's a third barrel down, very easy to get. The store-bought blueprint, if you get that, I believe it's like $8 to $10, which is not too bad. I haven't actually got it. I just unlocked the gun itself, but it does show you the attachment list in there. You do get this thing for free, or not for free, by buying it. You get it there right off the bat, but I don't recommend it. This gun's really easy to unlock on its own, so I wouldn't even bother trying to spend any money there. So what this thing will do, it will increase your damage range, and of course every time that you see damage range increase, the bullet velocity is going to be increased, because you have more bullet velocity, so it can go faster to hit people harder at longer ranges. So I mean, those are a given. And recoil control, it does increase the recoil control of this LMG. Now this LMG on its own, the base version barrel, is incredibly good. Like, it doesn't move side to side at all, or just about none at all. It is a little bit random at times, though it is a gun, so it's a little bit different every time. But for 99% of the time, it doesn't move, and it goes straight up, and it's a very small pattern. It is incredibly easy to control. Now, using the normal barrels, though, it will make it to where it shoots a lot. It will shoot a lot slower. It's about like a little bit on the lower end of the LMGs and stuff for terms of fire rate, but it's not a whole lot really. About 100 rounds per minute less. So you shouldn't recognize, the actual bullet velocity, or I mean the rate of fire, that much. And the cons, of course, being aim down sight speed, it is the biggest barrel that you can get aside from the XRK long shot adverse, which is essentially the same thing, but it's a whole different stat there. But this thing does give you aim down sight penalty, I believe, by 3 frames, so it's a pretty good amount. And movement speed has been reduced about 3%, so it does have some pretty good or pretty bad cons to it. But again, it's supposed to be built for long range, so mobility is not really your strong suit here. That's not what we're going for. Alright, so we got the barrel for the best recoil control. Under barrel, where you usually would pick the Merc foregrip because it'll give you increased hipfire and accuracy, a massive amount. Recoil control will go up, which we would definitely need, and movement speed will also be buffed up a little bit. But they got rid of the movement speed, which was the stealth buff, and you don't see that in the pros, and you never had seen it in the pros section. It was a stealth stat, or a hidden stat. So instead, we're going to be going with the bipod. Now, it doesn't give you any cons, and it does give you a little bit more recoil control than the Merc foregrip, as you can see in the stats. It's not a whole lot, but you could pick this because it has no cons, and it just gives you that benefit, which is better than the Merc foregrip. So I don't see why you wouldn't want it. Now the ammunition, now you can pick this if you want to, but I would just keep the 75 round mag. It's not really much of a difference. It's only bumping it up to 100 rounds, so you're not really helping it out too much. So let's go ahead and go to the other attachments to help out its recoil. Now its recoil, or help out its long range accuracy, but its recoil right now is so good that you really don't need like a compensator or anything on the muzzle, so we're going to skip out on the attachment area, and we're going to go to the attachments that help out the sight picture for like one of its scopes, and I'll go over that in just a little bit, and the two attachments that help out the aiming stability. Now, the tack laser is great because it gives you a bunch of pros: aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and walking steadiness. Those are all good, and it's only at a cost of, laser visible to enemies, but people don't really look at that anyways, and you should just be fine with that unless you're playing like, one of those night modes, I guess, which they don't really have anymore, so I think you should be fine. But the main reason we're picking this is the aiming stability. Now, the aiming stability, it stabilizes your gun sway. It's like moving left, right, up, or down. It's swaying in front of you, just slightly moving. That makes it to where the gun's a lot steadier, and it, kind of sits in the middle there a little bit better. Now, for the stock, then we would go with the very first stock, which is the XRK Citadel, I believe is how you say that. And this will also give you aiming stability, aim walking, movement speed. You're not going to worry about that. We're going to be shooting from a long range. So there you go. Now the aiming stability now should be just about on point to where it's just not going to move, or if it's going to move, it's going to be very little. Recoil is incredibly good. And for the optic, now if you want to go for the longest range, you can go with either the sniper scope, or I believe, yeah, just a sniper scope has the longest range. But I do recommend, instead of picking that, because the sniper scope has the high power 4.4 times zoom, and it does have the optical invisible enemies, so it balances out the long range, so people are able to see with that big white light or glint coming off your scope. I do recommend just going to the 4 times flip hybrid. Now what this is a hybrid scope, or two scopes combined. There's a holographic and a ACOG scope on the back there, as you can see with the little green area. That's the ACOG, and it's essentially two scopes put into one. Both of them have a 2 times magnification, and you flip the ACOG in front of the, or behind the what is a holographic, you'll get that 4 times zoom. So really this scope is only missing out on a 0.4 times zoom from the sniper rifle scope. You can switch between the two scopes, so you can have like medium or close range to longer ranges, almost like the sniper scope. And it doesn't give you optic glint, so people won't be able to see that big white light from your gun. So it gives you way more benefits than the sniper scope, while just losing 0.4 magnification, which is not really a whole lot, and you don't really notice it at all. So that's why I would recommend for that. So I'm just going to go ahead and put that on there. It's just probably the best overall for the kind of build. And this is essentially it that we're going to be running: the tack laser, XRK Citadel for the aiming stability, so every single, or like your gun will always track the person. You don't need to compensate for the sway. The bipod and the XRK long shot advantage, so you get the most amount of recoil control while crouched or prone, because that's when the bipod kicks in. And the 4 times flip hybrid, so you can get that extra sight picture, and it's essentially the same thing as the sniper, was losing 0.4 zoom. So I mean, again, it's hardly noticeable for that. And you can see on the bottom here for the stats, accuracy goes up a ton because of the recoil and aiming stability. Range goes up because of the long barrel there, and control goes up because it has recoil control there, so it's pretty good. And that's essentially it for the build. Now I'll go into multiplayer and I'll show you. Again, this is not supposed to be fast. It's going to aim down sights pretty slowly. It's built for longer ranges. So if you're going to be using this gun, use it at a longer range, especially like probably ground war, or Warzone would do nicely. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I'll just be shooting at a couple bots, using them as target practice, and you can kind of see how it works. Now, as you can see, actually, the aim down sight speed is really not that bad for an LMG, especially while sprinting like that and aiming down sights.
We're in the lead. Care package arriving on station. Precision airstrike available. On
Now,
your
the
mark.
only one thing that
Lock
you
it
need
the
to worry
fuck up.
about is the reload time. You know, it's 75 round mag. Again, you can put on a 100 there, but you're gonna have to swap out one of these
Pain is not my part.
attachments.
Support helo
Target
ready to
mark.
launch.
Requesting close air.
Hunter
I don't know how
221
to call that
stations
thing
weapons
in.
hot.
Target down.
So I do recommend using this in ground war. Again, it is incredibly good at longer ranges. I mean, it is an LMG, so
Visual on
it's
target.
gotta be.
Engaging.
As you can see here, the recoil control is really good. And that sway of the scope, you see that there's barely any kind of sway right there.
Target spotted. Moving to engage.
So this thing is incredibly good at long range. I mean, you can mow people down around. It has a slow fire rate too, so
Target spotted. Moving to
that
engage.
again helps out your recoil control a little bit. But it does make it to where it's a little less forgiving if you miss a shot or so. But again, you're supposed to be at long range, so they don't really, you know, lock onto you right off the bat. Now what I am going to do, I'm going to switch up the barrel, and I'm going to be going to the XRK long shot adverse barrel. Now what this will do is increase bolt velocity, so it's massively increased to 1,000 rounds per minute, which is pretty fast. Now this will increase your damage range a ton and your bullet velocity, so it goes even faster. Now you will lose a lot of recoil control, so it'll bounce a lot more. Aim down sight speed will be reduced and movement speed will be reduced, so it has about the same penalties as the normal barrel, aside from the recoil. That does get affected. So now shoots a lot faster like that. So what this does is essentially turn it into a melt machine at longer ranges. Now that was with me controlling it. It's a little bit harder to control now because of the longer fire rate, which makes sense. Longer fire rate, faster fire rate. Now, in order to compensate for that, I think you should probably just like take off the stock, which is the XRK Citadel. Keep the laser on there, and you can put on, where is it? The muzzle brake. This will give you recoil stabilization. So when you go on any of these adverse barrels, it does give you a side-to-side bounce. With the muzzle brake or anything that helps out recoil stability, it will give you a less side-to-side bounce or horizontal recoil. And it does help out a little bit with vertical recoil too, but not a whole lot. So this gun is actually pretty good in Warzone.
Call for fire.
Multiplayer,
Position
not
marked.
so much.
Striker 3-1, good copy. Strike inbound.
I'm not entirely sure why necessarily. It does technically reduce their damage a little bit to compensate, you know, try to balance out the longer or faster fire rate, I mean.
Enemy at the office.
So it's kind of using the same like SMG kind of format for its stats and such. But it doesn't mean it's not good. This sucker has a ton of range, and for this fast
My
fire
turn,
rate,
asshole.
that extra round won't really mean anything to you. And this is incredibly good. So where are you? So I mean, it is a little bit harder to control with this kind of barrel, but it is still incredibly good. It melts people a lot faster at those longer ranges. But if you don't want to use that, again, just use the normal barrel and use the other attachment slot for the stock, so you can actually get that little bit better aiming stability. Because now when I get it, you can kind of see a little more sway there without the stock. So I mean, that's essentially it. Those are kind of the two builds I wanted to go over. Again, they're pretty good. You know, this is not meant for close range or, you know, really medium range engagement. It's supposed to be for long range, because LMGs are not necessarily built for, you know, close range engagements. They're a lot heavier, they take a little bit longer to aim up. I mean, typical Modern Warfare stuff or Call of Duty stuff. If any of you guys actually play this game for a bit will know this. And I'm having a blast with this gun because there's so much junk you can put onto it to make it where it acts a little bit different. Now, if you want to see my other video that I'll be posting up a little before this one, and it is going to be on the worst version of this saw. I'm just going to call it the saw because, you know, that's what everyone knows it as. But it's essentially, it's going to be the slowest velocity and other things. I'll list what it's really doing and why it's so bad in the actual video. Oh yeah, I definitely recommend going and check that out. It's kind of also a two-parter build. I don't list it as it, but you can see the, so like, you know, the actual chainsaw, you know, build, like, you know, an actual chainsaw they would be running. It's not the gun. It's more for like a really lethal close range. And then, you know, again, the worst version of the LMG, which you can watch, and I'll list like what that really does. And that's really why the worst version of the gun, why I would post that on there, because, you know, normally people wouldn't want to use that. It is solely there just to meme on people. If you know you actually kill someone with a certain gun like that, deliberately gives you a disadvantage, and you kill someone with that, it feels good at those times, but it's still pretty bad for the most part. And I believe I have like at least 3 gun builds so far that actually goes into that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. These 2 builds, or yeah, about the 2 of the best builds for the gun so far I found. I'll be using this for the most part in Warzone or multiplayer in general. Probably not like in the 6v6 or anything, but longer maps and stuff, like Ground War or the 10v10 deal. So again, if you guys like the video, you know, go ahead and subscribe if you want to. Definitely like it, because that also makes it to where, you know, it kind of gets a little bit more popular. It's definitely nowhere going to get like anywhere up to the top 1 right off the bat, but it's, you know, it's there. And I'll see you guys in the next one.